Hey there, 508 family, and welcome to another episode of the 508 podcast, where we don't fear the future, we pioneer it. I am so honored to be your host today. My name is Justin. Some call me J Baby the Fourth. Some call me Dr. Davis. But I am not alone today. I am joined by some of my closest friends, and I have the honor of introducing them today. So we'll start out with Pastor Devin. How are you doing today, Pastor Devin?
I am doing well. I am so excited to be here. The podcasting is one of my favorite things to do. One, because it makes a huge difference, but I get to hang out with my friends and just get to have high-level conversations. So thank you, Jay Baby and Dr. Davis. You're already killing it with the podcast.
I appreciate that. Now we'll go over to Juama Noronha and check in. What's going on in your life, Hu? What you up to?
What am I up to? I don't know. It started to get warm, so I'm excited about that. You can't tell.
I see you have a hammock outside.
I do have a hammock outside. I watched my sunsets out there. I went to a pool yesterday. I know it doesn't look like it right now, but I did get a little crispy. And I don't know. It's starting to feel like summer. I'm excited. What's so funny,
guys?
I
don't know if people can tell through Zoom, but I need to get a little color. I'm looking pretty pasty.
I'm so glad
right
you said it, bro. I'm so glad you said it because I was going to go there next.
Oh, and I'm glad you spoke up because we have a special guest today. I don't know if you realize this, but we are joined today by Vin Diesel. Or actually, it might just be Michael Turpak, but I wanted to pump him up a bit. How you doing, Mike?
So was it the shoulders? Is it in the Zoom? You just see these.
You're looking big.
The shoulders getting bigger or something. Hey, here's the thing. Some people call me the Russian assassin. Okay, some people call me Blonde Beautiful, but today they call me Vin Diesel. Okay, thank you from the Dr. Davis. Thank you.
Well, we want to welcome all of you to the podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we just want to say thank you. We really hope you get something out of this. But before we begin, I'd love to shout out some of our listeners, some of our viewers, specifically Patience. Patience, we loved seeing a couple episodes ago. You had some handwritten notes, and that's exactly what we strive to do, is to just give practical advice on how to navigate your 20s. And seeing you take notes and actually get something out of it just means the world to us. Here at Connect, we do say that note takers are
history makers.
History makers. So Patience, thank you so much. And also the 508, one of our core values is honor. We have leadership, we have excellence, and we have honor, which means we love to speak into people's life and honor them for the work that they do. So I have someone specific today that I would love to honor, and she's actually here with us today on the podcast.
Oh, whoops.
Just a couple episodes ago, she made her debut on the 508 podcast. I think it was the 10 keys for your 20s. And Ru, I just want to say you did a phenomenal job. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking, but I thought you did so well and gave a lot of good advice, and were able to help a lot of women out there. So great job.
Thanks, guys. It was an honor to be surrounded by, P Dizzle over there and Dr. Davis. I appreciated you guys handling all these sass and eye rolls. Sorry, Bald and Beautiful, you weren't there.
Here's the thing. I get it. I get that. Okay. And here's my issue, though. With the culture of honor, can I get yay, Mike?
I am honored to be
I
here
just
with
said
you
you look like
today.
Vin Diesel.
Yay, go Mike, or something.
Come on, dude.
Sheesh.
I just said you look like Vin Diesel. That should be a compliment.
You're right.
Seriously.
Triple X.
You're right.
Hey, Chronicles of Riddick, pipe down over there, okay? Let's get into this podcast.
All right. So let's redirect it. I don't know if you've heard this yet. It might be breaking news, but there is something in the world today called COVID. And it does feel like some of the world may have pressed pause. And we would love to address that today in this podcast. This podcast is dedicated to how to not go insane during COVID. So I want to pass it over to you, Pastor Devin. I know you have a big idea today. Maybe we can break it down and let the viewers know what they should be expecting.
Totally. So COVID hits and it affects everybody in every way, shape, and form. And so now, this is just a review. I know you guys are experiencing this yourself, but let's just reflect on what's happened thus far. So coronavirus becomes a global pandemic. People are quarantined in their house. Loss of jobs, loss of finances. I can tell you guys personally. I mean, Natalia basically lost 2 of her jobs that no longer income is coming in. As a extrovert, and maybe you guys can speak to a little bit of how COVID affected you guys. As an extrovert and a social butterfly, not seeing people, feeling people, like hearing people, being around them, has been like, Justin's been making fun of me a lot. Like, dude, how are you doing? I'm like, dude, I was losing it, dude. And so, like, thank God for Zoom and praise God for it. But there is something to be said about just seeing face-to-face interaction, getting like touch a human being. Man, it's affected a lot of us. Like, tell me, maybe you guys can share, how has COVID affected y'all, and how have you guys responded to it a little bit? Because I know for me, I was going nuts for a little. And to be honest, still wrestle with it.
So
I mean,
Pastor.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I can relate to you, Pastor, because I love being with human beings and human interaction. Any excuse I have for it, I'm all up for it. I know you like to schedule like 14 in-person meetings when we were allowed to, and I missed that. But
make sure you keep that same attitude when we get back.
Yeah,
praise God.
But I mean, I miss all of that. I think we just really have to do our best to adjust, because who really knows what the new normal is going to be. But I have Day, she's my roommate. So, we kind of insanely keep each other sane. We just, I don't know, we go outside as much as we can. We find excuses to go to the grocery store. But that's the best we can do right now. And we're just hanging in there.
I feel like I'm still wrestling with it a little bit. I feel blessed to still have a job, which is nice. But I know we talked about this in previous podcasts, but I did get married like 3 days before going into quarantine. So it has had its blessings for sure. But at the same time, being stuck inside and with someone brand new, and learning to your life changing and learning to live with someone and different idiosyncrasies and changes, it's definitely a learning curve. And so there are some complications that come with that.
Justin, can I ask you a question? So yeah. I heard, I forget which podcast it was.
Where's this gonna go?
I heard that the Secret Service actually escorted you to an undisclosed location for you to get married. And so I just wanted to make sure, is that true?
I don't know where you heard that. I don't know where that came from, Mike, but it was secret. And,
that's what I was saying, Justin.
Yes. Not the Secret Service, but it was secret. No one knew, not even Mike. Rue didn't know.
That's what I was getting to. That's what I was alluding to, Justin.
People knew. Oh, okay. Well, praise God.
I will say it was a beautiful experience. It was secret, and there was a service, so I get where you're coming from, Mike, I guess. But it was beautiful, and man, I'm just telling you, like, I loved getting to see that, because they made something great from something, challenging. And I thought that was an awesome thing that they did. What about you, Mike? How are you handling COVID and Corona right now?
It's been pretty good. I think the best part for me is I'm my own barber. You know what I mean? And so, I think I've been grateful for that. I can shave, whenever I want to. And so, oftentimes I see, talking to Dev and just seeing him on the Zoom meetings, I'm like, Lord have mercy, somebody get that guy a weed whacker. You know what I mean? And so for me, I've been grateful. Like Justin said, I still have my job. I've been hanging out with my family, which has been good. And I've been praying for Devin's hair, and I've also been praying that the Lord would bless me with Devin's hair, that it would just come back. And so it's been good. I've enjoyed COVID.
So obviously Corona has affected our lives in every way, shape, and form. It's touched every category, financially, personally. I think physically. I just miss. I know. You guys are with me on this. I just miss the gym as well.
Yes.
So socially, there's a lot of things that have been removed from our lives, and honestly, forcefully removed. And so here's a big thought I want to give you guys today on how to not go insane during COVID. Because I think what happens is something like this. A physical health threat can become a mental health catastrophe. I'll say it one more time. A physical health threat can oftentimes become a mental health catastrophe. So really what we're trying to help you with in this episode specifically is make sure this is healthy and make sure you're not going absolutely nuts. Now, some things are certainly stripped away from you, removed from your life. And that's going to happen again, by the way. But you got to make sure we, navigate this challenging season and keep our mental peace and keep our mental health, especially if you call yourself a believer. And I know we have a lot of different, maybe people from different walks and backgrounds, and some people might be curious in this whole faith journey. But as a believer, the peace of God is your portion, and it's a gift that we can access. So we want to talk about that a little bit today. But here's one practical thing, super pragmatic. How do you make sure that we're healthy and not going insane during COVID? Number one, our big idea, limit the bad news and spread good news. For the love of God, limit your bad news intake. You have to audit your intake. I can't believe how many people are just constantly watching the news or on social media, and they're sharing like non-credible sources. Like if you look at the website, like how many times have we looked at this and you see websites and it's like, I don't know, I can't even think of some of the names of some of these websites that I've seen. The sun.cc. I'm like, what is the sun.cc? What website is this? And is this a credible source? Limit your bad news, but please, spread good news. You guys follow that Some Good News YouTube channel by John Krasinski, the guy from The Office? It's brilliant. Yeah. My gosh, and it went so viral because I think the world, and specifically America, is desperate for good news. Limit bad news, spread good news. How do we get through this COVID season? Limit bad news, spread good news. Now, I get some thoughts on this crisis in this season, but anybody want to share anything? Anything come to mind, and any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I want to pass it over maybe to the pacifier and see if he's got any practical tips that might help the people through these hard times.
I can't go after that. I can't go after that line. I can't even focus. So the topic is how to not go insane during COVID. I love the feel of that. I love, looking at that and be like, okay, what practically can I do? So I want to give you 3 things. I learned from the best of the best, 3 C's from my good friend, Pastor Devin Fry. If you're under his leadership, you will know that there is going to be a CCC or a PPP or an AAA for every single message. And so praise God. So the 3 C's, if you're taking notes, write it down. Certainty, control, celebrate. The last part is the best part. If you're on YouTube, you know what I mean? You got to celebrate. You got to
celebration. Come on. Celebrate. You can tell all of us are definitely going nuts during COVID. We're going insane.
If you could see, you guys got to see this on YouTube if you haven't seen it. So certainty, control, celebrate. So what I wanted to do was actually in episode 2 of this podcast, we did an episode on routine, rest, and rhythm. Routines, rest, and rhythm. And so what that looked like was that practically on a day-to-day basis, when you're in a time of uncertainty, what do you do? Like, what do I have to do as a person in order to get through? And not only just this, maybe you're listening to this at a later date, and maybe your business is about to shut down, or maybe you just got fired from work, or maybe it's like, man, I don't even know how to survive. Like, my kids are crazy. You know what I mean? So it's like, even at a later date, what do I do in the midst of uncertainty? The solution is this. You have to get a good routine. You have to have 1% habits. Have you ever heard of that term? Like 1% habits are like, what are the 1% people in this world that are doing it the best of the best? What did they do differently? I'll say it's routines and it's habits. And so in Luke 4:16, it says, he went to Nazareth where he had been brought up. This is Jesus. It says, and on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue. It says, as was his custom, as was his habit, as was his routine, as what he needed to do consistently. That's the important piece, consistently over time. Okay. So I love this quote by Aristotle. It says, excellence is an art won by training and habituation. We do not act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but rather have those because we have acted rightly. This is an important part. It says, we are what we repeatedly do. The Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so he becomes, right? And so we are what we repeatedly do. Then it says, excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And so let me ask you this question. This is for application. What are the habits in your life that are serving you? And then what are the habits in your life that are not serving you? So what are the healthy ones and what are the things that are not serving you? What are unhealthy ones? And I'd love to kind of shift and kind of get your guys' feedback. What are some healthy habits in your life? And then maybe what's some unhealthy things that you want to get rid of? For me, here's my issue. When I go out to the kitchen, okay, I have my fridge, and then at the top of the fridge, I have some healthy supplements right here. But then there's a potato chip bag in the back right corner, okay? And my issue is sometimes I'll walk out and I hear the potato chip bag literally talking to me. It's like, hey, get me some potato chips. And so what I need to do is I need to shift my habit from the potato chips to the healthy supplements. And so what could you guys say to that?
So I was actually talking to one of my mentors, and one principle she gave, I thought it was great, is even if you're taking this day by day, just set like two things, two goals that you'll achieve every day. So a personal and a professional. And I thought that was so great. Like for me, I mean, the bad food does speak to me, Mike, so I can relate to that. And most of my steps were between the couch and the fridge for a while. But I recently picked up some running. So I think that's like a personal goal that I do. I make sure that I go on a run every day or at least 5 times a week. And then a professional, whether you are working or you're not, it could be a ministry, like something to do with ministry. It could actually be something to do with your job. Like at work, I make sure that when I log off, I don't have any emails just sitting there. Or, I have a list of exactly what I need to action on the next day. So it helps me stay on track. But I also feel accomplished knowing that I did things that better me every day.
Yeah, that's good. Cause that's what I've been trying to do too, Rue, is write down. It's important to actually write down your goals and see them tangibly. Because it allows you to mark them off. There's something about actually taking the action of crossing it off or checking it off and saying, yes, I accomplished that. There's just something in your soul that you just get.
Do you write down that you're going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning?
I actually do. You want to see my whiteboard? It's right
and
up
then
here.
you check it off when it's 4:31 and you actually got up.
Yeah. And then the next thing is make sure to text Rue and tell her good morning.
Rise and shine.
Yeah, no, but I think it's also important to manage your margin. And that's the time in between things. And I know Mike and I have talked about this a lot recently, is it seems like we're actually getting busier. We have more time because there's less movement, say in commutes or being able to go to the gym or out to eat. There's extra margin, but we're filling that margin in with other things, whether it be social media or more meetings, more work. But it's really important to manage the margin that you have and utilize that well, because you need time for yourself to sit back and reflect, whether that's just time with you and God, or that's time to go over things like your goals and realigning what you're trying to accomplish, realigning what you want to do and where you want to be. Because let's face it, a lot of the goals that we created at the beginning of this year are completely different. You're not going to be able to achieve them because of the situations, but you have to be able to identify that and reassess that and maybe shift where your life is headed. And the best way to do that is within that margin time. So make sure that your margin is sacred to you and you're not just filling it in with crap.
Yeah. Dev, if you have
anything else to kind of add into that?
Yeah, I would say I would love to hear Dev say there's somebody out there that, they're really struggling with their routine right now. What are some very quick, practical, I know we covered it in a different podcast, but I think it's so applicable for right now. What can they do? What's something practical that they can do every day?
Yeah, great question. I think you got to win the morning. I think that would be the best piece of advice I could give. A lot of times it's stated, and I can't remember where I heard this from. I want to say this was from Dr. Henry Cloud in a book I was reading of his. But he says the first 7 minutes when you walk in through the door and you come home from work, the first 7 minutes sets the culture for the rest of the day in your household. So if you come in stressed, most of the rest of the day is going to feel stressed. If you come in happy and excited, the rest of the day will have that same kind of culture and feeling. I think it's the very same thing when you wake up in the morning. So I think the first hour to hour and a half will really determine the culture of the rest of the day. So for me, what I'm doing, I have a 2-year-old son, and a lot of times he wakes us up and he's the reason we wake up. But I am feeding my spirit and I'm feeding my soul. I'm drinking water. I take about 2 glasses of water. Mike, that's actually something that you mentioned to me, and I've been doing it ever since, and it's been so helpful for me. And so just winning the morning, I think, is so valuable and so important. And so I would be very cautious of even I think there are times where you can rest, extended rest through the weekends and stuff. But I think we should all, even during Corona, you shouldn't just wake up, and roll into bed right into a meeting or something like that. I just don't think you're winning the day that way. So win that morning, and I'm telling you, I think the rest of the day, the culture will be set because you won the morning.
Yeah, it's good. That's good, Dev. So that's number one. That's number one of how to not go insane during COVID. You need certainty. How do you do that? You get a routine. You get a habit. As was Jesus's custom, he went to the synagogue. He went to the Sabbath. He had a custom. He had a custom that he did. And so number 2, control. And this isn't being controlling. This is controlling what you can control. And so from my perspective, what I say is control the controllables, right? And so especially in COVID, there are only certain things that you can control. There are only so many things. Like, that's why we wanted to start at the beginning with habits, because that's something that, like Dev said, I have the focus and I can control what I can control in the mornings every single day, no matter what the economy looks like, no matter if my business is going under, no matter if I'm a pastor and the ministry is going crazy and I have relational issues and all this different stuff. I can always control the controllables. So I wanted to give you something very practical. And we talked about focus this last podcast. So focus is so important. You can control it. So when you control your focus, it's so important when you're in times of uncertainty. And so how do you do that though? Because we talked a lot about focus in the last podcast. If you haven't seen it, go back. So how do you do that? The easiest way to control your focus is with a question. If you ask a good question, I think the best leaders in the world are people that ask the best questions. Why? So what you hear that, but why is that the case? Because when you ask the right question, your focus goes there. We said in the prior podcast, where focus goes, by the way, energy flows. And so you want your focus to change. So then your feeling will change. And then your energy is going to a positive thing instead of a negative thing. So I'm going to give you some very practical tips. Here are some good questions. And after this, Dev, Jess, Rue, I would love to hear some questions that you ask yourself. Maybe what are some other positive ones, but here are some good ones. Write this down. What am I grateful for? By the way, these 5 or 6 I wrote down, I actually do this daily. So this is a routine for me. This is a discipline for me. I actively write this down every single morning before I get to work. So what am I grateful for? Who am I grateful for? That's a good one. Who am I grateful for? What is the best part of this quarantine? I was on a call yesterday and I was listening to one of the leaders in my company, and she was saying, the quarantine is the best thing that ever happened to my business. And I was like, sheesh. And then she asked herself this question: why is the quarantine the best thing that ever happened to my business? And you know what your mind will do? It's a servo mechanism. So what it'll do is, like, if you have your focus on something, it'll get you there. And that's why clarity of focus is so, so, so important. So another one is, why am I so blessed? Why am I winning in life? Right? And so what other questions would you guys ask?
I would ask, and this is what I am doing, is a lot of reflection. It's just, what am I learning in this season right now? What are things that I need to stop? What are things that I need to start? I think the beautiful thing about Corona is you have something to blame something on, meaning, there are just some habits and some routines. I think a lot of businesses are going to change quite a bit from this time, because we're going to realize you can actually keep on going and actually save tons of time doing virtual meetings. Of course, there's going to be some things we're going to be in person. But I think we're realizing, wow, we can actually do this from home. We can work from home. Or, there's some things that we can stop. We can stop meeting in person with the same frequency. We can start meeting virtually, and we get the same things accomplished, and we save time doing so. So what are things that need to start? What are things that need to stop? And then what am I learning in this season? To me, what I'm doing a lot of is self-inventory, kind of taking autopsy on, how's my life going? What are the things that produce the most? And what are the things that produce the least, and identifying them. So something that I just picked up recently, I've been going on like bike rides a lot. Actually, Rue and I were talking this past week, and she's been, running and stuff. And so I'm like, I need to get my cardio in. And I hate running. It's so boring to me. But I just got my bike in my garage, and I've just been biking. I biked like, I want to say it's like 14, 15 miles just this past week. And it's just been so helpful and healthy for me. I'm listening to some podcasts as I'm doing it, and I kind of use this as my commute. So as I was driving, a lot of times what I did was I went to a vehicle university. You guys have probably heard me say that before, where I just am listening to podcasts, sermons, or something like that. And so I lost that habit because we're not driving nearly as much. So as I'm biking, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just feeding my mind, feeding my soul. And that's been super helpful for me. So questions I would ask are, what do I need to stop? What do I need to start? And what am I learning in this season? I think it's a great few questions you could ask.
I had something to add. So we actually had a whole teaching on this in sisterhood, but we have to really just focus on, Mike, you mentioned this, like what we can control. So, we can control our own feelings, we can control our own thoughts, our own behaviors, and then what we do with our own time. And I thought that was so important. And like, maybe it's a me thing, but I know a lot of women just struggle with being planners and just wanting to be in control. And obviously this is a situation that we can't control, but we can control, what we do with it. And like asking those questions and just making the best of the situation by focusing on those things, I think is just how we get through this, in a healthy way and come out of it better.
Yeah, that's good. You have something, Jess?
Yeah. I feel like you guys covered most of the questions I'd be asking. The one that I really liked that you had talked about, Mike, was what am I grateful for? That's what I continuously ask myself, ask my team, because I want to shift their focus from that negativity. That big idea is feeding yourself with negative news. That's not doing anything for yourself, for your mind, for your soul. And so it's shifting that perspective towards what am I actually getting out of this? How am I benefiting from this situation? What am I grateful for throughout this? And that's what I try to ask myself daily, but then also practically towards like my career. Currently, what am I doing everything I can to make sure that my team is taken care of? As a leader, you're responsible for others. And during this time, this is where you solidify yourself as a leader, is when you're able to show people that you truly care about them. So am I doing everything I can to lead my people the best way possible? And then also, what are my goals in life, whether it be my calling within the ministry, my career goals, and can I take advantage of the time that I now have to move forward towards those? I have a laundry list of things I'd like to accomplish, and a lot of them I just didn't have the time for. It was just kind of the lower priority things, but now I can knock those out. Steps that I want to take, but I just feel like I'll just push that off to next year. That's next year's goal because I just don't have enough time. But now I do have the time. And so it's just reassessing kind of what I want to do and where I want to be, and then practically breaking that down on what each step do I need to take? Because just putting an end goal at the end of at the finish line, you're not going to ever get there. You know, it's like if a football team, all they do is focus on the scoreboard, they're never going to win. If they just stand there on the field and look at the scoreboard, nothing's ever going to change. But it's focusing on every single down. And when you can perfect everything you do, all of those steps, it'll get you to that end goal. And so that's kind of what I've been asking myself is, what are the little things that I can take advantage of now in order to get me where I want to be, and how can I be stronger now than I was before the pandemic? So
beautiful. Yeah, and I'll end this point with this thought. When you try to control the uncontrollables, that's where anxiety, stress, worry, doubt, fear. So when you're trying to control something that you can't control, your body and your mind and your emotion and your heart will respond with anxiety. And so maybe you could do a diagnosis. What am I trying to control that I actually can't control? For example, other people and how they'll respond and how they act. So I think that's a very practical thing. But what we can control, our time, our feelings, actions, choices, habits, desires, like we can control those things. Dev, you want to say something?
No, I just said that. I want to say that's excellent, bro. I hope people listen to that. Like, you get anxiety and depressed because you're trying to control things that you simply cannot control. I think that's powerful. The principle comes to mind, which is like, you know, their response. You talk about people. Their response is not your responsibility. You can do what's right. You can do what's true. You can do what's healthy for you and healthy for the environment. But their response is not your responsibility. Stop trying to control things that you can't control, because it will only produce negativity and anxiety. I want less of that, not more of that in my life.
Yes. Amen. All right. So point number one, how to not go insane during COVID. Point number one is this: certainty. So control your routine. Point number two is control the controllables. You need to fix your focus. Point number three is this. This is my favorite one. I actually have a coach now with my company, and he's been getting me fired up. He's like, he asked me this question the other day. He's like, how are you celebrating? I'm like, I'm not actually. No, I'm not at all. And he's like, you need to change that. He's like, look at your life. He's like, look how hard you are on you, Mike. He's like, you hold yourself to this impossible standard every single day, and you strive and you go and you move and you're a mover and shaker, and you want to do good. You want to be there for your relationships and all these things. But he's like, what's the point if you're not celebrating? Like, what is the point of life if you're just going to go through it and just charge through it and just be like, yeah. So this is a very practical, this is point number three. Celebrate. You need to celebrate you. And I'm preaching to me. I'm like, man, I wonder what my life would be like, or how I would feel, keyword, how I would feel on a day-to-day basis. If I was asking myself, this is a very easy question to ask. What specific wins can I celebrate right now? Or what specific wins in my life can I celebrate from yesterday? Or what am I winning in? Like, how can I celebrate me? How can I dance? How can I dance a little bit? You know what I mean? Do you guys want to, like, how can I be in this place of like, man, Mike, you're doing all right. Like, Dev, you're winning. Like, you're doing a great job. Like, you're a great leader. Like, you're leading this ministry at a level of excellence that's in the 1% of all ministries worldwide. So it's like, do we feel that on a day-to-day basis? Like, Root, the fact that you're running every single day right now, that's something to celebrate. It's like, wow, she's taking control not only of her life, but of her health, of her physiology, of her energy. And now she can be a better leader for other people. So let me ask you this question. How are you celebrating you? How are you celebrating life? How are you celebrating yesterday? How are you celebrating your wins? How are you celebrating your business? How are you celebrating the fact that you're a pastor? Like, you're leading, you're doing the Great Commission. You're building leaders. You're teaching them the concepts of the Bible. Like, how are you celebrating you? Do you guys have any thoughts to add on to that?
Go ahead, Jay. I'll let you go.
Oh, I was gonna pass it to you.
Okay.
But no, I think this is such an important. It's an often overlooked concept, but I think it is so important, and it's not just overlooked in celebrating yourself personally. I think it's in everything. You see it often in the business world, where we move from project to project to project. It's like as soon as something gets done, you don't take the time to actually celebrate and look back and appreciate all the hard work that was put in, all the wins, all the blood, the sweat, the tears. It's just like, nope, let's move on to the next thing. And it's discouraging, because you want to, if you celebrate something, it allows you to really look forward to that next thing, because once I'm done, I'm gonna get to celebrate again. And so adding some time to reflect, like I said, managing that margin. If you can put in time to really reflect and celebrate, like Mike said, what am I thankful for? What do I want to celebrate from yesterday? What have I done today that I can celebrate? Like Rue said, your personal and your professional goals, you get those done, celebrate them. You actually got it done. Move on to the next thing and celebrate it once you accomplish it. Because the less you celebrate your accomplishments, the less you're going to want to accomplish.
So good, bro. Yeah, I think the concept is brilliant, and it's something that I'm not very good at. I don't think a lot of people are very good at celebrating themselves, their growth, their progress, or God's goodness in their life. I think our nature is to be so critical and even condemnatory towards ourselves or people. And so I think if you don't laugh, you won't last. I remember hearing this in a teaching I was just listening to. If you don't laugh, you won't last. I don't think if you don't celebrate, you're going to continue going and moving forward. I don't think you're going to last in this thing. I don't think there's any longevity if there's not celebration involved with it. And so, and it's a completely biblical concept, by the way. In the Old and New Testament, you'd see weddings. Weddings would literally last like days or weeks. They would party so hard and celebrate so hard. So we know, we think about the Old Testament God, and we think he seems angry. But you see both in the Old and New Testament, God established these principles in place and this way of life in place, a celebration. And I mean, man, I wish we had more parties that would last like 7, 8, 9, 10 days. Can you imagine that? Sometimes for 508 nights, like we go in on 508 nights in our services, and it just goes by so fast. So like 2 hours, an hour and a half just goes by so quick. And it's just like, that's done already. And people can't wait to move on to the next thing. But I think we have to celebrate the current things. I think that's such a healthy thing for mental health, for longevity's sake, for family and team's sake. Celebration needs to be something that we instill into our culture so much more.
You know what I was thinking, Dev, as you were talking? I learned this from you, was like, what's the point of winning if you're not enjoying and if you're not celebrating? What's so true. Like, there's no point. There's no point to it. If on the other end of a huge win, you're just like, what do I got to do next? It's like, where's the place in you where you can celebrate the person that you're becoming? And Dev, just to end us off, I'd love it if you could share, you had 4 practices that we can practically do in our lives during COVID. I'd love for you to share that.
Totally. First one would be this confession. If you're struggling in this season, confess it. Let somebody know. You're going to hear this a lot, and this is going to be a very repetitive theme in this podcast. Is just being honest with yourself, first of all, being honest with God second, but being honest with somebody. Confess it. If you can name it, and you can name what you're struggling with, you can beat it. But you have to name it first. The second would be discussion. You got to talk it out. You got to process it out. Ask some credible people. Ask some people in your small group. And if you don't have a small group, get in a small group. Ask some people, comment, DM. Just ask some questions and have some discussions and ask for some help in that. The third would be reflection. I think so often, John Maxwell has this quote. He goes, experience is not the best teacher. Evaluated experience is the best teacher. So reflection is a key when it comes to winning in life and when it comes to winning, especially during this season. And so reflect on some things. What are some things I need to start? What are some things that I need to stop? What are some things that are amazing and help me? We were just on a call for our leadership academy at our church. And one of the pastors and leaders that was sharing, he was saying, what is your Fab 5? What are the 5 top priorities that you need to be focusing on? And what helps you win better? And so I think so many times the reason we're struggling is because we don't have priorities. And if you have, 10 to 20 priorities, you don't have any priorities. So confession, discussion, reflection, and here's the last one, adaptation. Basically flexibility. My uncle used to say this to me all the time. He goes, flexibility is the best ability. And so we have to adapt in this season. And if you constantly live in the past, you will die to the future. Let me repeat that one more time because it just came to me. If you live in the past, you will die to the future. The world is changing. There is a new normal. There is a new way of life. And so you have to reflect and you have to adapt. You know, I didn't prefer to be everything to be online, but we live in an online world. We live in a tech world. Technology is king right now. And so we have to learn how to adapt and make things the best that we possibly can and build momentum this way. And some things might go back to the way they were a little bit, but we live in a new world now. We live in a digital world, and this digital world is here to stay. So there are some ways that you just have to adapt. So the 4 practices, one more time: confession, discussion, reflection, and adaptation. I think it'll help a lot in this season.
Yeah, I love that concept of living in the past, you died in the future. I think that's so practical, so wise. And so I just want to say thank you to the 3 of you. Michael, thank you for your 3 C's, because I know that they are so helpful, having consistency, taking control, and just celebrating, taking a step back, reflecting, and celebrating your wins. So that is it for this episode of the 508 podcast. I just want to say thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for joining in. You know, if you got something out of this, please like and subscribe. And, you know, we love to hear your feedback. If you got something out of this, please leave a comment of your top takeaway. And always remember, here at the 508, we don't fear the future, we pioneer it. Thank you.